Let's add JEI compatibility to our Minecraft mod. Even more topics available in the 121 Minecraft modding courses, now with energy and fluid handling for block entities next to many other awesome topics. Alright, we found us back in Gradle once more, and in this tutorial we're going to be adding a JEI compatibility to our Minecraft mod and our project over here. And the great thing about this is that we will have access to JEI inside of our project. So if we start the game via IntelliJ, we're going to have JEI accessible to us, and we're going to make it so that the custom recipes for our growth chamber block entity will properly be displayed inside of JEI, all with, I mean, it's gonna be really freaking cool, I'm telling you, but let's just see what we need for this. And to add this, first and foremost, we want to go to the GitHub repository of Just Enough Items right here, and we want to scroll down to the developer wiki right here. I'm going to open this in a new tab for 1.21 for NeoForge, Forge, and Fabric. And here we want to take a look at, first of all, the repositories, because that's the first thing we need to copy over. As per usual, the code is available to you down below, and I will also link the GitHub repository of JEI as well. And we want to basically get everything in between the first and last curly brackets over here. So both mavens right here, and I'll copy those. So simply select them, Control C to copy them. And then we're going to go down in the build.gradle file to repositories. And this is where I'm going to paste both of them in. And then we can go back over here again to the dependencies for Forge Gradle for Forge. And we want to copy over those two lines, the compile only and the runtime only. And we're going to copy both of them in as well. And here, it's very important. You can see that both the MC underscore version as well as JEI underscore version are both grayed out. We can, well, sort of make sure that that is not the case by changing MC version to Minecraft version. And we want to do the same thing right here. Minecraft version. There we go. Minecraft version. Minecraft. No, that's not it. There we go. And then here, the JEI version. That's just a new variable that we wanted to add to our Gradle.properties file. So I'm just going to go down over here. I'm going to say JEI underscore version is equal to, and then the question is, what is this going to be equal to? Well, we're going to take a look. This is going to be equal to the newest version over here for 1.21.1 is 1921.1248. So we're going to take that, right? 1921.248. I don't think that that's it. I think that there was a, yeah, it's a 1. There you go. Okay, that is it. So this is going to be 1921.1248. That's the one we're going to choose, and then we will simply reload those Gradle changes. This, can take anywhere from a couple of seconds to a minute or so, depending on how fast your internet connection is and things like that. If the little elephant of the Gradle reload does not appear, you can also open the Gradle tab and then use reload all Gradle projects as well, and that would also work. But for the time being, just stay patient, let this run through, and then we can proceed after this. And there we have it, built successful in 23 seconds, nothing too crazy, and let's just see. So in our tutorial mod package, we're going to make a new package called Compat. Inside of there, we need 2 new Java classes. The first one is going to be the JEI tutorial mod plugin class. There we go. And the next one, or the other one, is going to be the growth chamber recipe category. There we go. We're going to start with the category, as this will implement the iRecipe category over here, the interface. You can see from Mez JEI API. So we know everything has been added successfully. If this does not appear for you, then you have not added JEI successfully to your project, and you need to basically go back to the first couple of steps to add it properly. We're going to implement this, and we'll, of type, by the way, growth chamber recipe. We'll then hover over this to implement the methods we need, and that is that. Then we need 2 resource locations. Now, I will copy both of those over. You have all of this is available to you, of course, in the description below, but you will see that both of them are very straightforward. The first one is a UID, which literally is just pointing to growth chamber tutorial mod, growth chamber basically, and then the texture over here. Where could this possibly lead to? Of course, textures GUI growth chamber GUI over here. So both of those should more or less be self-explanatory. We then need a recipe type. However, this is a different recipe type. So public static final recipe type. And you can see we now need to choose the one from Mez JEI API. Very important. So tap to autocomplete this. This is once again of type growth chamber recipe. We'll just call this growth chamber recipe type. It's a little bit of a crazy name, but that's okay. And this is a new recipe type, passing in the UID, and then passing in growth chamber recipe.class. And that is basically going to also now have a type associated with it. Lastly, we need two fields. Those are going to be private final fields. So private final iDrawable. This is going to be the background. And what we can actually do is simply duplicate this because the second one is also a private final drawable, but it is called icon. We simply want to hover over this to add constructor parameters, having both of them selected, say OK, and then it's going to automatically make a constructor. The only difference here is that we actually don't want the iDrawables as parameters. We actually want an iGUI helper over here. I'm going to call this the helper. And then the assignment looks kind of like this. The background is equal to helper.createDrawable, passing in the texture, passing in 0, 0, and then 176, and then 85 as a height. And the icon is going to be a helper.createDrawable ingredient of type vanilla types.item stack with a new item stack of modblocks.growthchamber.get. So the idea here is that the background is going to be our custom texture, meaning that inside of JEI, it's going to display our custom texture that we have, right? So the GUI, and it's going to display that. And for the icon, we're simply using the growth chamber as an item. That should be more or less understandable. In the get recipe type, we're simply going to return the growth chamber recipe type. The title is going to be the translatable of block.tutorialmod.growth_chamber. Should be the thing that we already translated. In the get icon, we're going to return the icon, and I will also copy, or rather overwrite, the get background method, even though this is, as you can see, marked for deprecation and removal. Right now, we're going to still have this in here because I have not found another way to do it. Sometimes one of the issues, let's say, or some of the things that you will find working with APIs is that they will quite frequently change, and sometimes when they change, there's changes that are somewhat, let's say, obtuse. But that just happens. Anyway, the last thing that we want in our recipe category is to add the slots, basically saying, okay, this is where I want my inputs to be displayed, and this is where I want my outputs to be displayed. To do this in the set recipe method, I'm going to say builder.addSlot, and this is going to be for the ingredient role of input, so recipe ingredient role input. Then we are going to have this display at x54 and at y34. And then we're going to add ingredients, very important ingredients. And this is going to be recipe.getIngredients, and then we're going to get the ingredient of index 0. That is simply going to get us the ingredient. So the idea here is that, of course, we have access to the growth chamber recipe, which is the class that gets created when we read in a recipe JSON file. So we have access to the ingredients over here, and we're simply getting the first one, and that is that. We're displaying this at 5434, which, incidentally, when you look at, for example, the menu over here, is exactly where the first slot is placed inside of the menu, and that's why we place it there. And similarly, we're going to have the builder.addSlot over here for the output this time, so recipe ingredient role output at 10434. And here we want to add item stack, and this is going to be recipe.getResultItem, simply passing in a null here for the P registries. We actually don't need that because our custom one doesn't actually use this. And that is the entire recipe category done. If, of course, you have multiple types of recipes, you would need a new recipe category for each of those. Then we're going to go back to the JEI, or we're going to actually do the JEI tutorial mod plugin over here, and that's going to be fairly straightforward. Above the class, we're going to have the @JEI plugin attribute, and it will also implement the iMod plugin interface. Let's hover over this to implement the getUID plugin UID method, and that is the only method we need to implement. Here, we simply will return a resource location .from namespace and path tutorialmod.modID, and the name is going to be JEI plugin. Then we want to override at least 3 methods. The first one is the register categories method. Categories, there we go. The second one is the register recipes method. There you go. And then also the register GUI handlers method. And finally, we'll also recipe catalysts method. And then let's start at the very beginning, and I will explain all of them as we go along. Within the categories, we want to call the registration over here .addRecipeCategories, and then make a new growth chamber recipe category, passing in registration.getJEIHelpers.getGUIHelper. And crazy enough, that is actually everything we need for the category. Now, in this case, each category obviously has to be registered individually. That's the idea. When it comes to the recipes, well, that is a little more complicated. However, you will find that it's not that bad. It's going to be recipe manager. So we're going to make a recipe manager variable over here. We're getting this from Minecraft.getInstance.level.getRecipeManager. And we will then have a list of growth chamber recipe over here. I'm going to import the list class. There we go. This is going to be the growth chamber recipes. And this is going to be equal to the recipe manager dot get all recipes for the mod recipes dot growth chamber type dot get. And then after the second closing parentheses, we want to convert this to a stream. And then we want to map this for recipe holder : value dot to list. Highest level overview, we basically simply get a list of all of the available recipes that exist for this particular type, right? The growth chamber type over here, and the stream and the map over here. That's just to get it into a format that we can easily work with. That's the highest level overview. And then finally, registration.addRecipes for the growth chamber recipe category dot growth chamber recipe type, passing in the recipe list over here, and that has this registered as well. Then we get the GUI handlers, which is going to be super freaking cool. This is going to be registration.addRecipeClickArea. We're going to write this out and I'm going to explain what this does. Growth chamber screen.class at position 70, 30, 25 width, and 20 height. And then this is once again for the growth chamber recipe category.growth chamber recipe type. This is going to add a clickable area exactly where the arrow is. So this is going to be for our GUI, let's say. And that's going to be right here. This is going to be growth chamber. So right around this case, right around here, it's going to add a clickable area. Highly recommend it to play around with the numbers a little bit. I think this should match pretty much exactly where I want this to, but that is a thing that you could do. And then finally, the catalyst over here is going to be registration.addRecipeCatalyst for a new item stack over here for modblocks.growthchamber.get. And then as item, I think we do need to do this as an item. And the second parameter here is going to be the recipe type, which is going to be the growth chamber recipe category.growth chamber recipe type, the crazy thing. And what this does is it allows you to hover over the growth chamber and press U to also see all of the uses of this particular block in that case. And that is basically everything we're going to need in this case for our JEI plugin. It is super freaking useful to have this just because it makes it so much easier for, your mod to basically be added to other mod packs. Because if the user has all of the recipes available within JEI, right, if you have custom ones, this makes it so freaking easy. Highly recommended to add this. It is a safe way. And the awesome thing is, because this is just a compatibility, this is not a dependency, meaning if your mod now is added without JEI, that is absolutely no issues whatsoever. It will still work totally fine. And that's the awesome thing. Regardless of that, let's jump in the game and see if it works. Alright, fans, back in Minecraft, and let's just take a look. If I hover up, first of all, you can see JEI has been successfully added. And if I hover over here, look at this, show recipes. If I click on this, I can see all of the different recipes that, well, basically exists over here. If I were to hover over the growth chamber, press U, I can see the uses, meaning the actual, well, catalyst, so to speak. And here, raw alexandrite, I can press U to see the blasting recipe, the smelting recipe, as well as the growth chamber recipe. And if I press R, right, how can I get an alexandrite gem over here and see even here, it all works. Absolutely fantastic. And that is JEI compatibility added to our Minecraft mod. Freaking awesome. As per usual, all of the code is available to you down below, but that's going to be it for this tutorial right here. Next time, next time in this video, I am not exactly sure what we'll do, but I still hope to see you there. So, yeah.